Hello, welcome to Oxford Heirlooms. In this video, I'm going to begin to sew the skirt so that I can attach it to the bodice of the dress. Now, I'm going to be making French seams on the side of the garment. So I've got my two front and back pieces pinned together. Got white thread in my machine, and I have it set for a straight stitch. And so I'm going to sew about 1/8 of an inch or maybe a little bit less next to the edge of the fabric. Okay. Just make a tiny little seam. Take your pins out as you come to them. Okay, when I finish doing this first pass, I will go to the ironing board and I will press my seam to one side so that I can come back and do the second pass of the French seam. But I have to do this on both sides of the dress, so this will take me a minute to do. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I have both sides sewn the first time, and I've been to the ironing board and I've pressed the seam. So now I'm going to do my second pass of the French seam, keeping it right at a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch. Since I can see my original seam through the fabric, I'm just going to stay as close as possible and keep my French seam very, very small. Okay, this will take me a minute to get both sides done, so I'll be right back. Okay, I've got my tiny little French seams done on both sides. I haven't pressed it to the back yet because I haven't cut out for my placket or created my placket yet, so I don't really know which is the front and which is the back yet. So I've got to make that decision. So I'm going to turn my fabric right side out for just a minute. Now up at the top center of both the front and the back, I have made a little blue mark at the top center of the skirt pieces. Now I'm going to get my placket piece, take pins out of my pattern piece. Then I'm going to fold my placket in half and line it up along the back of the garment, and I'm going to make a mark where I need to cut this open in order to sew the placket on. So I've made a little blue mark down here. Now just to make sure that I cut in a straight line, I'm going to use my little drafting triangle, line up my two blue marks, and draw a line. Okay. All right, now using my fabric cutting scissors, I'm going to cut a slit along the top, which is going to be where the placket will go. Let me see if I can zoom out just a little bit. Okay. Now starting from one side, I'm going to pin my placket along this slit. And when I get to the bottom of the slit, I will simply put a pin and continue going. Just pin the placket piece along the edge of the slit. And when you get to the bottom of the slit, you see where the little blue dot is? I'm going to put a pin in right at that blue dot And then I'm going to bring the other side of the slit over and continue to pin my placket in place. Okay, now using a straight stitch, and from the skirt side of the fabric, not from the placket side of the fabric, as you can see, I've got this slit pinned in, so I'm going to start about 1/4 of an inch away from the top edge, and then I'm going to sew in a V. So my seam allowance will get smaller and smaller as I get to this bottom blue dot. And then I will continue, I will sew right through and sew up the other side of the slit. Okay, once I get past the bottom of the slit, I'm going to gradually make my seam allowance get a little bit wider and wider until I'm back out to 1/4 of an inch. Okay, all right, now I need to go to the ironing board and press this seam toward the placket piece. And then I also need to press the seam in towards the placket and also press the other side of the placket toward the seam so that I can fold it in and then hand sew it into place. So this will take me a minute at the ironing board. Okay, so I've been to the ironing board and I've pressed the seam toward the placket and the other side of the placket in. And as you can see, I have this pinned into place. So using my favorite little stitch, which in my case is a whip stitch, I'm going to tack this placket into place. Now, if you like to do some kind of invisible stitch, that's perfectly fine. It's just whatever you want to do in order to tack this placket into place. Just take some small stitches, a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch. Let me try to stay in frame. And just sew that placket, hand sew it into place. Okay, so this will take me a minute to get this all done. Okay, I have that all stitched down, and I went ahead and went back to the ironing board and pressed it. Now I'm going to fold it over on itself and come down here to the bottom of the placket from the inside of the dress. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew at a little 45-degree angle. I'm going to sew some stay stitches at the bottom of the placket, holding the placket to the inside of the dress. Just come down here and we're going to sew just back and forth a few stitches just to tack the placket into place. and that helps to keep the placket from flipping to the outside of the dress once the dress is constructed. Okay, now in the next video, we will, well, one more thing I'm going to do. From the outside, I'm going to pin, as I'm looking at the back, the piece on the right, I'm going to pin my placket to the inside because I want to remember in the next step that this is the side where the placket is going to be folded inside, because you want the placket to lay on top of itself from the outside of the garment, just like that. You see that? Okay, so I'm going to pin the right side over because my buttonholes were on the right side of the back of the bodice, so I'm going to want my placket to be on the inside on the right side. But what we were doing today was we were sewing the side seams, the French seams for the skirt, and also creating the placket on the back of the skirt. And in the next video, we will work on attaching the skirt to the bodice. Thank you.